Well, this is not good news at all. Hello, my gaming brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for this week's weekly news gaming wrap up, where we talk about all the gaming news it's fit to cover. This is going to cover the week of April 5th through 11th, and we have a few things to talk about. We have Pokemon Champions, which released and has had some issues with the transferring the Pokemon, which is a big deal. Got some open world gaming news, including something about Crimson Desert and a game that's getting ready to come out that has a lot of people interested. Plus, we have Epic refusing to learn from other people's mistakes, which is nothing new for them. As all with each news video, all the stories are time-stamped in the description box down below, so feel free to scroll down, take a look at the stories on offer, and jump to one that interests you. Before we get to all that, however, we got to talk about our headline story, which is about Marathon and the news about its development cost has come out and what has come out. And let me tell you, this is not good. Okay, we're going to start with this IGN article from Thursday, the 9th of April. Marathon reportedly had a budget of over $200 million, and while the pressure is on, it's not facing an imminent Concord-style shutdown. Not yet, anyway. A new report has claimed Marathon's budget is over 200. Okay, that repeats the headline. Forbes reported that the Marathon budget is likely more than $250 million. It's worth noting this spend allegedly does not include ongoing costs for the game, nor development of post-launch content. As a live service, obviously, they have to add more content. They're going to be have to maintain servers, so hardware, bandwidth, dev costs, developer salaries, and everything to add more content is all ongoing cost, and it's just adding to the price. Last month, one analyst said Marathon hasn't exactly made the splash Sony and Bungie wanted, estimating sales at around 1.2 million copies. That and Alinea Analytics said amounted to a gross revenues of around $50 million across all platforms. I'm sorry, $55 million. On Steam, Marathon hit a peak concurrent player count of 88,000 at launch. That number has fallen steadily. The latest 24-hour peak hitting 25,000 players. We'll look at that in a second. They say it's out on the consoles, but Paul Tassi had revealed a week or two ago that PC is the dominant platform with an estimated 70% of the sales and players on PC. So the Steam concurrents give us a decent idea of how it's tracking. Bungie is under pressure to deliver for Sony after recent and public financial failings. In November, Sony said Bungie had failed to meet its sales, resulting in a $200 million impairment charge as a result of Destiny's underperformance. Essentially, they were losing that money. They lost money for the company. That was significant enough to drag down profits at Sony's Games and Network Services segment, which includes Sony Interactive Entertainment. So that was bad. Bungie was bad enough to drag down the entire gaming division for Sony. They said they're working hard on new content. They're not in danger of imminent shutdown. But what happened to Sony's own Concord and more recently Highguard, everything around Marathon feels a little on edge. And they talk a little bit more here about the game, about its difficulty, and maybe that's why it hasn't found its audience, and so on and so forth. And they just go down here a little bit, talk about that. I read this, and I don't feel any particular joy. I've said that I'm not going to take any particular happiness or glee if this game does fail. I'm not going to dance on its grave because clearly there's still a lot of people that enjoy it, and that's always what I want. I just want people to have games they like. This is a game that's got 25,000-ish players. In fact, let's go look over here at the Steam database. Okay, here we are, and it's sitting at 26,000 players right now, 28,000 player peak. If I go back a month, we're still seeing, last week, they had a weekend bump. They're having a weekend bump each week. They're just getting lower and lower. Still clocking in 28,000 players, the max. They've just been in kind of a steady decline. Understandable for a single player game. Not great for a multiplayer game. So they're getting 30,000 players in a day on Steam. That's concurrent. That probably means that over the course of the 24-hour period, there are 100,000 different players that are coming and going, between 100 and 150-ish. The problem is that if this game only made 55 million, let's just be generous and say it made 100 million, it's made that much, which would involve an insane amount of battle passes and cosmetics and all that kind of microtransaction jazz. It's still quite possibly $150 million in the hole, and this isn't even counting marketing. That $250 million should be well over 300, maybe 350 million by the time that's figured in. And with 150,000 players, you're just not going to make up that kind of deficit. Now, the article, like I said, does talk about possible solutions. Do they go free to play and risk angering the people that have already paid for it? Do they try to make it easier and risk angering the fans that seem to enjoy the hardcore nature element? There's just element of it. There's just no good solutions for them right now. And they've kind of painted themselves into this corner with the cost of this game. They're just not going to sell enough copies of it, and they're not going to sell enough microtransactions. You realize 150,000 players, if every one of them would have to spend $1,000 in microtransactions to make $150 million up, and that's just not going to happen. It's just not. And the number of players, just the way it's going, it's just going to keep dropping. We're going to talk about a game later towards the end of the video where we're seeing multiplayer game where the numbers are going up. And that's what you want to see. Do you want to see them stay steady or rise? Because they just aren't going to make this money back. And it's this. Part of the reason I think this hasn't shut down yet is mostly out of hubris. They don't want to admit it's a failure, even though the handwriting is on the wall. They want to get as much money as they can out of it. But at some point, if the player count keeps dropping, they're not even going to get enough money to cover their maintenance costs. And I think once that happens, that's when they're gonna cut it off. I said a little while back that Sony could possibly be in a very unique position. Aside from this, they've got this other game, Horizon Hunters Gathering, the live service type team player coming out. Although that's, I think, more of a PvE and not a PvP focus. It's coming out later this year. And then they've still got this other game, Fair Games, floating around. They could be in a very real position where they have 3 major live service failures in the span of 18 months. Or if you want to say 3 years, if you throw Concord in there, 4, possibly to the tune of $500 million to $1 billion losses. And something has just got to change. I've seen people kind of throw the term around that this is partially what's going on with the hardware prices going up. That we, the players, are being forced to pay the Concord tax through higher, console prices. That's the game company telling us, taking it out on us that they've lost all this other money. I wonder if in the next couple of months we'll be talking about a marathon tax. Okay, this is going to be hard for me to maintain my objectivity because I don't like either of the two companies involved here, but I'm going to give it a shot. Since we were talking about extraction shooters, might as well go right into this. This Dual Shockers article from Saturday, April 11th, says, I don't know who wanted Mickey Mouse meets Arc Raiders, but Disney is doing it. Disney is no stranger to the bizarre crossovers or weird video games, but a rumored upcoming title might be the strangest of them all, as an extraction shooter in the style of Arc Raiders featuring Disney characters has leaked online. Okay? And they talk about the investment they've done. They've put a lot of money into Epic. That's resulted in some collaborations, specifically mostly with Marvel in Fortnite. There have been a few other Disney characters that have crept over there. And some Star Wars characters, which are under Disney. But, this is going to be one of the weirdest things I've talked about. And I picked this article specifically because it captured my thoughts that I was having when I heard this. It says, seems the Disney and Epic Games collaboration would soon bear fruit. According to a new Bloomberg report, a team of Fortnite devs is making a Disney-themed extraction shooter set to launch in November 2026, assuming no delays. Now, bear that date in mind. Okay, so how would this work? Could a Disney-themed Arc Raiders work? It doesn't have to necessarily be intense or bloody. Kingdom Hearts franchise has proven that Disney video games can feature fantasy violence and receive an age rating acceptable for its audience, and so on and so forth, which I believe that's a valid point because it does not have, when they say extraction shooter, it doesn't necessarily have to be a shooter per se. It can be very lighthearted. It can be very, quirky. It could feature the cartoon characters, maybe go, almost in a capture the flag type of race to get something and get it out. It doesn't necessarily have to involve a lot of violence. So there are ways they can go about this. It says the biggest question The bigger question, I should say, is whether anyone will care enough about a new extraction shooter, whether it feels Disney characters or not. The success of Arc Raiders is the exception, not the rule, as the market is bloated with extraction shooters that shut down after not leaving an impression. Now, I can't say I know for sure what they're thinking, but my guess is they are banking on the same franchise relatability that Marvel Rivals had. When Marvel Rivals came out, it's been about a year and a half ago. Obviously, Marvel Comics has been an entertainment powerhouse for 60 years. And the MCU, the Marvel movies, even though it's fallen off, I feel like in the last 7 or 8 years, the first 10 years of it really introduced an entire swath of people to the Marvel characters that had never heard of them, and has made a lot of characters much more household names like Iron Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and people like that have made them household names where they never were before. And I think Disney is banking on that same nostalgia and pop culture factor for this. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they're hoping to draw appeal for. However, here we get down to the point, and this is like I said, when I said, remember that date, this is what I immediately thought about. More importantly, this rumored Disney extraction shooter will be going up against GTA 6, assuming they hit their release dates. If that happens, then no amount of Mickey Mouse magic will save this project. And that's the bottom line. If they put this out in November of 2026, they best be prepared to play the long game and hope they can draw people in, over the next 5 to 6 months. Because if not, they are going to gain zero traction. And I'm also, I don't know this for sure, but I'm also guessing Disney is going to be leaning on Epic rather hard for their investment. So is this going to be a Marvel Riders, Arc Raiders type of success, or are we seeing another High Guard in action here? You tell me. Let me know down in the comments. I'll just touch on this briefly because it's an ongoing story. But this article from GameSpot, Pokemon Champions bug has made some players lose access to their precious monsters. This was published on Wednesday, April 8th, the day that Pokemon Champions released. And for those of you who don't know, Pokemon Champions is essentially a game where Pokemon can be drawn from Pokemon Home, which is where all your Pokemon from the Pokemon games can be transferred. All the monsters, the Pocket monsters you've curated and trained over the years can all be consolidated there. They can be brought to Pokemon Champions for a competitive, combat of Pokemon combat in gameplay. However, apparently what's happening is that attempting to get them from Pokemon Home into Champions is leaving a lot of these Pocket monsters in limbo. It says, let you use the newly released Pokemon Champions game lets you use Pokemon from older games through Pokemon Home, though some players shared a bug that has locked them out into purgatory. Competitive Pokemon player Justin Karras said on X that trying to send Pokemon from Home to Champions resulted in an error code. Those Pokemon couldn't be transferred to Champs, traded on Pokemon Home, sent back to their original games. Replies indicate other players are experiencing the same issue. There is his tweet on X that details these problems. One user said they received a reply from Nintendo support suggesting to clear the cache for Champions and the Switch console, but it doesn't seem to work for Karras or other players. Excuse me. It is unknown at this time if these losses are permanent or temporary, if they can be resolved or not. There are also other bugs that are being reported with Pokemon Champions. Overall, the player satisfaction, from what I'm reading, seems to be fairly tepid because of the ongoing problems with it. It feels very half-baked. I saw a comment where somebody said they basically compared what they were doing here to what Bethesda did with Fallout 76, released a half-baked game and just try to patch in and make it working on the fly. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just saying that's what I saw somebody else say. I've seen other commenters say that this should have been considered an early access game given the state that it's in. I know that Nintendo has said that they have a whole list of bug fixes they're going to do. No patch date has been announced, but I'm sure that we may hear more this week coming up. So anyway, if you're a Nintendo fan, if you're a Pokemon fan, if you're looking at Champions, be aware that it's still having some problems. and just mind where you send your Pokemon off to in between games. See, things like this are what make me really, really excited to be part of the gaming community because I love the creativity and the can-do-it nature of gamers. This article from PC Gamer from Wednesday, April 8th. Crimson Desert female character creator mod lets you cook up your own gender-swapped Cliff, and there's a male version in the works. If you're unfamiliar with Crimson Desert, somehow, it is a sprawling open world adventure game that released several weeks ago and is doing quite well. We'll go over to the Steam numbers in a minute, just take a look. But it surpassed at least 4 million sales, maybe 5 million now. I don't remember exactly, but it's doing well. Say what you will about Crimson Desert protagonist Cliff, he is, by all accounts, present. Unfortunately, not much else. Guys got less personality than a tax office cubicle. So as is often the case, as modders provided where the developer hasn't, the modder Keon95 has released their character creator female mod for the Crimson Desert, letting players replace Cliff with a heroine of their own making. And it says down here, but if you're looking to recast Cliff and keep him a man, Keon intends to release a male version of the character creator mod soon. I did check over on Nexus as of the publishing of this video on 12 April. The male version of the mod to create your own character is also available. The mod does require the use of a female voice mod, which uses a specialized AI model to process Cliff's original dialogue. Whether or not that constitutes an asterisk because of AI is at your discretion, so however you want to approach that. Now we'll go over to Crimson Desert. This game started off really rough. It had a mixed review rating because of some of the bugs and stuff. Pearl Abyss has been pretty on the ball. They've patched out a lot of things. They've fixed a lot of things. It's up to about an 80% positive review rating on Steam. And you can see on the charts, it is still doing quite well. Now, this is what a weekend bump is supposed to look like. Marathon, 141 up to 198, 176 up to 236, 50, 60,000 players increase. 25 to 30% increase in your player count for the weekend. But several weeks in, it's still getting, in the neighborhood of 200,000 players on weekends. So the game is going quite well. And like I said, I love to see this. Players recognize something in the game that is not what they want. They mod it, they fix it, they share it so more people can enjoy it. I hope Pearl Abyss is not going to be dicks about this and just let the modding community run with it. It's a single player game. People should be able to play it however they want. And I'm here for it. You want to play as a chick now? You have that capacity and all is good under the sun. And since we're talking about open world adventure type games, I wanted to point this out from Games Radar. This article was published on Thursday, the 9th of April. Open world pirate survival game with over 1.5 million Steam wish lists. Windrose finally has a release date and it's sailing into early access next week. The high seas will be getting sailed quite soon indeed, as pirate-themed survival Windrose finally has a release date. It'll be playable mere days from now. Enter early access on Steam, Epic Game Store, and Stove, which I'm unaware of, on April 14th, which as of the posting of this video is 2 days from now, Tuesday. Less than a week from the time of the writing. So basically, Windrose is a co-op or single-player PvE pirate survival type game. Now, they had a demo that was posted on Steam. I watched some people play it, and you can see here it's showing a 92% positive for 5,500 English language reviews. 92% is pretty good, so it was pretty well received. A lot of people seem really interested in this, and like I said, it's a 1.5 million Steam wish list. Somebody in one of the reviews said it's like Valheim, but with better graphics plus piracy. So that gives you an idea of what kind of a game you're getting into here. I'm always leery of early access games just because when you pay for something and you already know it's going to be not the finished product. However, if you're anxious for some piracy action, and let's face it, we haven't had a great pirate game probably since Black Flag, go check it out. Anyway, in any event, it'll be out on Tuesday and we'll see what's up. We're just going to file this one under lessons the game industry just refuses to learn because they keep repeating it. This Insider Gaming article from Monday, April 6th reads, Star Wars Eclipse development is very slow going. What's really going on with Star Wars Eclipse, first announced at the Game Awards in 2021, information regarding the action-adventure game from developer Quantic Dream has been few and far between. The last update anyone was heard in official capacity was that work was continuing along the game alongside other projects. 2021, for those of us keeping score, that was over 5 years ago, and we're not getting much information. Development has been going very slowly. One source even mentioned the fact the team has been making very little progress over the months. For what it's worth, a good portion of the game has been completed, but for what they still need to wrap up, sources say it isn't going that well. The game at this stage is still looking to be years off from completion. Then they said down here, both NetEase and Quantic Dream are really relying on Spellcaster Chronicles, which entered early access in February, to bring in revenue that can be spent on Eclipse's development. Now, I'll go over to Quantic Dream's homepage. These are their games list, and you can see they made games like Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human, which were kind of those narrative adventure action games from the mid 2010s. But Detroit Become Human came out in 2018. That's 8 years ago. And Spellcasters Chronicles is more of a MOBA style free to play game that's in early access now, and the reviews have been average at best. So they're not exactly churning out titles. At this stage, the long-term outlook is less driven by creative capabilities and more by financial stability. Should Spellcasters fail commercially, NetEase is expected to reevaluate its commitment to the studio and could opt to discontinue further investment. They've been developing this game for 5 years, and they say it still needs years off to complete. We see this where these games have these incredibly long development trains, and they just, the longer it goes, the harder and harder it becomes to be financially viable. We're not talking about Silksong with Hollow Knight here, which I think was, 9 years or 10 years? 9 years between Hollow Knight and Silksong. But that we're talking about 3 or 4 guys who are working on this, not tens or hundreds of people who all have to be paid, and all the architecture has to be maintained, and all the expenses of running a business go on and on and on. And it seems like we never learn this. And people will point to things like, say Witcher 4 has been in development for 11 years now. It's true, but CDPR also did release Cyberpunk in 2020, which sold 35 million copies. That was a huge boon to them financially. Yeah, I know Elder Scrolls has been in development since, before Christ was born. But again, Bethesda also released Fallout 76, which has probably turned a profit by now. They've got a dedicated enough player base. And they released Starfield, which, say whatever you want about it, probably sold in the neighborhood of 4 to 8 million copies. Todd Howard said it was Bethesda's most financially successful game ever. Plus, it just released on PlayStation, where it's selling more copies, enough that they made a profit on it. These companies, even though they've got these games in long-term development, they're still putting out games to at least defray some of that cost. Quantic Dream hasn't done that. They've published a few games, but they've put out nothing until Spellcasters. And they weren't a huge behemoth of a studio anyway. So now the longer this drags out, the longer it seems like it will. I think it's more likely the longer this drags out, the more likely Eclipse will never materialize, and Quantic Dream may fold with it. It's unfortunate, but unfortunately, it's just the reality of the game developer life cycle right now. Okay, really, this one just kind of annoys me. Not from a game perspective, but from the stupidity of multi-bajillion dollar companies. This is a gamesindustry.biz article from Friday, April 10th. Google removes Doki Doki Literature Club from the Play Store. Games creator and publisher say the game, quote, violates Google's terms of service and its depiction of sensitive themes. They've removed it from the Play Store. It was taken off on April 8th. I want to say when I looked that it had come onto the Play Store in December or January, so it was a matter of months. Now, for anybody who's unfamiliar with DDLC, it is, on the surface, kind of a typical waifu dating simulation type game. It looks very basic. It looks very cutesy. And it is when you start. However, it takes a much darker and more serious turn later in the game. It's not an all sunshine and rainbows type of game. It becomes quite serious, and it does handle some very sensitive subjects. And we're not even talking necessarily, it doesn't necessarily veer into the horror elements. It's just more darker elements of human nature, I guess you could say. But I find this interesting mostly because Google say this violates their terms of service in the depiction of sensitive themes. Considering some of the shit that is indexed in Google searching that you can see, that you can go out there and type into your Google search bar, that is, I mean, would be considered at any other point in our human history to be acts of utter depravity. For them to balk at this seems very much like selective outrage, almost like somebody in the Google Play Store management got a bug up their ass about it and decided to, play, I'm going to be the virtuous one here. So in any event, I wouldn't much worry about it. You can get the original DDLC off of Steam for free. There's an upgraded version that will cost a few dollars. If you've never played it, I recommend go checking it out. Like I said, it is available for free, and I think it is worth playing at least once just to see. So anyway, not available on Google, but it's their loss. Go check it out on Steam, and if you have played it, again, let me know what you think down in the comments. Okay, I'm going to finish up with this Eurogamer article from Thursday, April 9th. Don't Starve is back for more darkly whimsical co-op survival and Don't Starve elsewhere, and this time it's with Hills. Clay Entertainment, Clay has unveiled a brand new multiplayer installment of its gloomily amusing survival series Don't Starve. It's called Don't Starve Elsewhere, and it promises adventure in a strange, unforgiving new world filled with magic, monsters, and mystery as opponents take on their greatest opponent yet, Hills. The original Don't Starve, with its appealingly gloomy spin on roguelike survival, launched back in 2013, was followed by the co-op focused Don't Starve Together in 2016, and a decade later, a third entry has been confirmed. It says details are still fairly limited, but at this early juncture, they're promising, alongside the series' familiar survival core, new biomes with distinct climates, and so on and so forth. So this will be very interesting. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this set of games, they are actually one of the more played games on Steam, which I found rather surprising. Not so much Don't Starve, which was the original single player, but the co-op version, Don't Starve Together, which came out in 2016. I'm going to go over the Steam database and I'll show you. It's got a great review score, but this is what it looks like from the last week. Okay, that doesn't necessarily show you anything. This is what it looks like over its entire life cycle. And I want you to take a look at this. This is a game that started back in 2015, 2016, was only, getting 10,000 players on a daily basis. And I know there were a lot less Steam players, but this is a multiplayer game that has continued to spike over time. And even in the last 6 months, you can see it's averaging 50,000 players a day. This is a game that's 10 years old, and it's a multiplayer game. It was doing half of this 10 years ago. And this is something else that's interesting, that if I go over to the most played games on Steam, by 24-hour peak, it's literally number 36 based on the 24-hour peak. I mean, it's in the company of games like Helldivers, beating out games like Elden Ring and Battlefield 6 for most played on a daily basis. That to me is rather incredible. This is what I was talking about with Marathon. Marathon wants its player count over time to go up as it gets more and more players. It's kind of what Arc Raiders did. They've gone down since, but the few months after it launched, its player count had gone up. Game like Don't Starve Together, its player count has gone up. Marathon's hasn't. But for these guys, they're going to be putting out a third game. I played this a while back. My wife and I played it together. She really liked it, but I found it rather enraging, so we stopped playing. But it's a game that a lot of people enjoy, and they're putting out a third one. And I always love to see players getting more of what they're enjoying. So Don't Starve Elsewhere, coming soon. Okay, gang, I'm going to leave this week here. I probably babbled on enough for 1 week. If you enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like on the video. If you think I missed a major news story in the gaming world, drop a comment down below, or if you want to comment on any of the other things I talked about, that'd be great. I read all of my comments. I try to answer as many as possible. Hit that bell note to be notified when the next news video is uploaded. And if you think I've earned your subscription, I would love to accept that. It only takes one click. It helps me out a whole bunch, and I thank you in advance for that. Still working on more videos. My latest How Does It Play Today video, where I look back on games celebrating their 25th anniversary, that went live this week. It was for Max Payne. Seemed to garner a lot of positive reception, so go check that out. I am almost done with my 100% completion run through Tomb Raider 2013. I got a couple more videos. The next one will be going up in a few days. It's a game's done. I've recorded everything. I just got to finish doing the videos. So that'll be done shortly. So the whole thing will be ready and I'll be moving on. I've got some more videos planned. And again, I thank you in advance for checking those out. Okay, I will be back next week with more Quickbird news. So until then, y'all go out there, you live your best lives, take care of yourselves, and y'all stay gaming.